Hello everyone, welcome to Starscream's Ghost, a Transformers podcast, your episode-by-episode podcast guide through the classic Transformers Generation 1 cartoon and now Japanese anime continuity. I am Jeremy Graves, and joining me as our intrepid journey continues, the intrepid traveller, Mr. Andy Hanley. Good sir, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. The sun's shining. I'm in a good mood. So, hopefully we're not going to have anybody die to ruin it for me.
Oh well.
Oops.
If you listen to the end of the last podcast, folks, you'll know that you heard our reaction to one of the episodes that we are discussing today, because we will be discussing episodes 23 and 24 of Transformers Headmasters, which have the following titles: Mystery of the Space Pirate Ship, and The Death of Ultra Magnus. I would normally do my best to try and hide, let's call it like it is, a big spoiler like that. Bit difficult when it's the episode title.
Yeah. Which then that episode doubles down on, because the background of that episode title announcement is basically just showing you Ultra Magnus getting shot, and it's just okay, this isn't even a fake out, is it? This is actually happening.
So just millions of lasers being shot at him. But at that point, it's just, well, what's the context? And we will find out in due course. But a quick bit of housekeeping: if you are joining us for the first time, be it in the audio-only realm side of things or watching the video version on YouTube, thank you very much for checking out the show. We hope you enjoy it. If you do, why not tell a friend? If you want to find us on social media, we are on Twitter and Instagram under the name StarscreamsPod. We also have a Patreon page, which we don't take money for. It's just a long-term audio archive solution for the podcast. You can find that at patreon.com/StarscreamsGhost. And if you want to find the YouTube version, if you're not watching it already, simply go on YouTube, search for Starscream's Ghost Podcast. You should find us just fine. And a random point of reference as well, if you are a new listener and for whatever reason you're joining us quite deep into the season at this point. The episodes that we are watching of Transformers Headmasters, we are watching the UK DVD release from circa 2004 to 2005, which, for the benefit of the video viewers, I am holding in my hand right now. This is how we are watching the episodes, so the subtitle translations and such, that is what we are basing all of our notes on. So if any names seem random, maybe random spoilers pop up 5 episodes before they're meant to. That's why it happens, as we found out in the last podcast. With that being said, Andy, before we get into the episodes proper, general thoughts on the 2 episodes that we are going to be delving into today. Yeah,
they were good. I mean, to be honest, is the Cliff Notes version. I kind of wasn't expecting much of the first of these 2 in particular. I thought this is going to be a bit kind of, boring, bland starter before the main course. But actually, it was a good episode that was pretty action heavy, very well animated, in places. And yeah, it was kind of a good solid continuation of some of the through lines that are being set up as things currently stand. So I kind of enjoyed that. And then obviously we went on to the big story, I guess, of these 2 episodes, which, yeah, also did not disappoint. It kind of, when you have an episode title like that, you're kind of going to have to swing for the fences and go for it. And I think that episode does, it really sort of follows through on what it's setting up. And yeah, it's another big sort of tentpole moment for the series, I guess. And also, again, interesting that pretty much all of the big tentpole moments have involved bad news for the Autobots, who are still continuing to have a really bad time in this series, because it seems like they're not catching any breaks anytime soon.
Yeah, that's actually one of the themes that comes up sort of multiple times over these episodes, particularly in the second episodes, where the Autobots are really starting to acknowledge, we can't get a leg up on the Decepticons. What the heck are we going to do? But you mentioned the animation. I thought the animation quality as a whole was a big step up for these 2 episodes, particularly in the action side of things. There is some phenomenal action, and we'll be getting into episode 23 in just a moment. And even at the start of the episode, there is some excellent action right from the offset.
Yeah, for sure. It felt like those kind of typical episodes where clearly they knew what was coming in terms of production schedule. We're okay, we'll kind of skip over the talky bits and not make those look too great, because we want to focus all our time on the action scenes. And yeah, there's a really good kind of variety of those throughout that sort of, I feel like it's almost runs the gamut of all the cool things that Transformers can do, because over the course of these 2 episodes we get some big kind of gestalt fights. We get a little bit of Metroplex versus Trypticon as a spoiler, albeit only briefly. Trypticon does not even fall in a lake in this one, but there's some good kind of hand-to-hand combat stuff. There's a bit more sort of classic G1, lots of laser fire stuff, and there's a real variety to it as well.
Yeah, so you know what? We're sort of getting into the throes of that. So let's dive into these episodes. I will say, I also did enjoy both of these episodes, actually a heck of a lot. So looking forward to discussing these from now, because it is time to delve into episode 23, Mystery of the Space Pirate Ship. Somewhere in the depths of space, on a barren world, we come to find out is simply called, Andy, Pirate Planet.
I mean, that sounds like a ride at like Disneyland or something, doesn't it? I mean, that's kind of like a theme park ride somewhere. There's got to be a pirate planet somewhere.
I mean, honestly, it sounds like it's a ride at a theme park that's got no licensing. It's kind of like, it's big for the area, but it's not like a big named one in like the country it resides in.
Yeah, it's like your kind of knockoff Pirates of the Caribbean ride. It's just like, hey, come and join John Robin and his crew. And it's just like, oh, I see what you're doing here. Fine.
So, we are introduced to 2 new characters, which I'm pretty sure, Andy, we've never seen before. And based on what happens at the end of this episode and the fact they're not in the next episode, I'm guessing we're just never going to see them again. But we are introduced to the Decepticon clones, pronounced as Clonebot in the Japanese dialogue, who are known as Pounce and Wingspan. They touch down on the rocky surface of the planet, and their colour scheme has got a bit of a white and blue tinge to it, which I thought was going to play into a particular character we'll be mentioning very shortly. No is the short answer to that, in case any of you have figured that out.
Yeah, I was also confused about this, because my first thought when I saw these characters is that they looked a bit like the Autobot Jumpstarters, which I don't think ever turn up in the G1 cartoon. It's like Top Spin and Twin Twist, who have a very similar design and the same colour scheme. So I'm like, this is weird, because they're not Decepticons, and also, why are these guys suddenly turning up? But yeah, I think Pounce and Wingspan did turn up in the Rebirth, but they look different. So I think these characters have actually turned up in G1 before, but yeah, will probably never turn up again after this, I suspect.
We get our first bit of dialogue from them, which is worth noting as well. When they're interacting with each other, they will talk individually, the clone bots, but when they're addressing, say, Galvatron, as they will be in a few moments' time in the context of this scene, they kind of always talk together by the look of it. So it's got some cool voice moments in it as well when it comes to the dialogue. But their first line of dialogue to each other is, "We must find the skull before Lord Galvatron arrives here." We then see Pounce pull out half of a golden skull-shaped idol head, sort of almost like a coin type thing, from a compartment on their chest. And it becomes very apparent very quickly they need to find the other half. Then we hear someone off-screen say, "We've been expecting you." The clones respond with, "Who's there?" Then 2 more Transformers leap out from behind a rock face, both looking very similar in build and just general appearance to the Decepticon clones, but their colour scheme is sort of a lighter red and a darker red combo with some white and grey as well. It turns out these are the Autobot clones, named Fastlane and Cloudraker per the TF Wiki. And they were lying in wait to ambush the Decepticon clones, because it turns out they've got the other half of the skull. See where this is going, folks? This immediately prompts the 2 set of clones to engage in really a great energetic battle. And at this point, Andy, I looked at the timer on the episode. We were including the intro sequence to the show, which is about, minute 20? We were 2 minutes into the show when this battle began. This battle was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, it really goes for it. It's particularly weird because, I mean, these are not kind of, and I genuinely, this is one of those, like, I wish you could have like the behind the scenes documentary of why they chose these kind of clone characters to be sort of main characters in this particular episode, because they're not really big toys. They're not like new characters that are being launched or anything like that. but they kind of get a lot of play. They get to look really cool. And I think at least the Decepticon ones did get like toy forms. I'm not sure whether the Autobot ones did, but it's just like, oh, this is kind of interesting that you choose these guys and not some, you know, more established characters that you'd maybe want to show off and try and flog some toys for.
Yeah, and the fact that we're launching into this the way the episode has, I really liked it because there was that air of the unknown, which, if you've been listening to the entire podcast run of what we've done at this point, you know that's something I really enjoy. But this was to a point where it felt like this feels like it's something established, but is it? And we'll come to find out, it sort of is and isn't, it turns out. But during this battle, the Autobots have kind of got the upper hand, but then Six Shot appears. And this is when I was talking about the colour scheme and who they might be related to. I thought these clone bots of the Decepticons were related to Six Shot because their colour scheme is identical.
Yeah.
Turns out they're not.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a broader question of, like, clones of what? Because that's never really answered. Like, you know, that you get a little bit of backstory later on that doesn't really explain why they're called clone bots. But anyway.
So the Autobot clones are able to escape having been outnumbered. As the Autobots escape, Galvatron arrives on the scene. Now keep that in mind, what I said. And the following conversation unfolds. Galvatron says, "Have you carried out my orders and located the energy hidden here by the space pirates?" To which my immediate thought, Andy, was, "Oh, we're watching One Piece." The clones respond with, "No, not yet." Galvatron says, "What have you been doing then?" Pounce specifically then responds with, "We didn't get the other half of the skull from the Autobot clones." Galvatron says back, "Hand it to me. Stop messing around and find those Autobot clones immediately." And it becomes very apparent very quickly that this is going to play an important part in what is going on, and clearly this skull is going to be linked to energy. And like I said, Andy, it feels like we're watching watching an episode of the anime One Piece, because it's established there is some energy hidden here, pirates have hidden it, and people want to find it. I'm like, okay, I wonder if Transformers did it first in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, I was more focused on the fact that I am always a sucker for space pirates, like particularly if they are bodacious. But even if they're not, I'm still here for space pirates. And yeah, like at this point, I'm just like, show me the space pirates, damn it.
Elsewhere, the narrator tells us that Fastlane and Cloudraker have contacted Battleship Maximus, effectively summoning the Autobots to come to Pirate Planet. As they set forth on their journey, Daniel wonders if everyone that lives on this planet is a pirate. But Highbrow sets him straight by saying, quote unquote, "I'm not sure, but long ago it's said that space pirates used to plunder neighbouring planets." Daniel responds with, "Just like the Decepticons?" And Highbrow says, "Exactly." Hardhead then chimes in and says, "Hey, Chrome Dome, we tried to stop the Decepticons stealing energy, but they always get away with it." Chrome Dome responds with, "They've attacked 13 planets and managed to steal energy from half of them." Which immediately, Andy, I thought, wow, you guys have been doing a bad job, haven't you?
I mean, yeah, like it's also sort of framed weirdly here that it doesn't quite kind of join the dots, and there being the self-awareness of like, maybe this is our fault, maybe we are bad at this. But yeah, you're kind of like you're halfway there, guys.
It does also set a kind of an interesting timeline in that we've obviously not seen all 13 planets being plundered, but we've got an idea as to sort of, okay, this has happened a lot, and we've seen a bunch of the stories in between.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've not been keeping count to sort of say how many of these we've seen at this point, but yeah, I guess we've not seen the full 13. Maybe they were hoping for some like spin-off OVA series that they could do for the rest at some point, because we know how Japan does this stuff.
Exactly, or like a manga or something. You know, that's normally what they do as well. So all that conversation leads to the Autobots reflecting on Galvatron's mysterious plan for the energy, that he and the Decepticons have been gathering. We also find out through dialogue in this scene that Highbrow's continued attempts to identify Scorponok's weak spot, which we totally don't know what it is based on the last podcast, he has been unsuccessful in doing that so far. Everyone basically keeps telling him just to plug away at it and hurry up. His response is, "I'm doing my best. If it were easy, it wouldn't take so long.
Yeah, I'm with Highbrow on this. Like, I was kind of feeling like everyone's being a bit harsh here, because it's like, oh, come on, why haven't you done it yet? And it's like, well, have you solved this equation? No. So just shut up and let Highbrow get on with it. Like, and if you think he's slacking off, then give him a clip round the ear or get someone else to do it. Don't just whine about it.
We'll say to Chrome, at least I didn't just let space junk go into space. So, while Chrome Dome is also now making a promise that he clearly won't be able to keep about saying he's going to make sure that he does some serious damage to the Decepticons, of which Fortress basically says, Chrome Dome, shut up, which is quite good fun. Battleship Maximus, as they're travelling to Pirate Planet, enters a space graveyard, with Highbrow describing it to Daniel as, quote-unquote, a place where all the broken down, old and obsolete spaceships are gathered. The gravitational pull of so many spaceships makes the place dangerous to approach. End quote. Highbrow and Daniel are particularly interested in a ship that looks pretty intact, to say the least. But also, Andy, calling like it is, it's a freaking pirate ship in space.
Yes, it absolutely is, and I always have fun when they try to do this whole like, oh, it has energy cells and stuff, and it's like, I'm not sure if the science of this checks out, but hey, cool, it looks like a pirate ship.
Yeah, I didn't note it down specifically, but they mentioned something like that the sails of the boat sort of collect solar energy, which in itself is actually a pretty interesting concept, so I was game with that.
Yeah, like it kind of, it's definitely like, at least they put some thought into it and not just, I don't know, it just looks like a pirate ship. So I'm like, yeah, cool, that's fine. Although I do have to ask, like, Highbrow really kind of goes on about like, oh, it's really dangerous to approach this whole thing. And it's like, well, why are you there? Like, why are you approaching it? This seems like a bad idea.
Do you know why, Andy? Because that's how good their logic has been the past few weeks, that's why. So while being impressed with the spaceship they're looking at, Daniel notices that there's something attached to the bow of the ship, the front of it, if you will. Highbrow notices from a little scan that the skull's emitting some kind of strange signal of some kind. And of course, with Daniel now knowing that pirates in space do actually exist, he now wants to explore the ship. But it's Wheelie, of all people, that basically tells Daniel, mate, not now, all right? You know, we've got an important deadline here to reach. Let's not stop and look at the pirate ship this time. We then cut back to Pirate Planet, the narrator informing us that Maximus has touched down, and we immediately see that the clones are battling each other once again, except this time the Horicons are adding to the firepower on the Decepticon side of things. A tackle from Apeface actually knocks the second half of the skull from the Autobot's grasp, and the Decepticons, I won't say retreat, I'll say they pull out of the battle, now having both halves of this skull coin thing, returning to Scorponok. There, Galvatron links the two skull halves together, activating an electronic map on the coin, seemingly pinpointing the location of the energy they are trying to find, which, as we will come to find out in the upcoming scene, Andy, is known as proton energy. And we'll learn a bit more about that in a few moments' time. Elsewhere on the planet, Maximus is on the planet now, as mentioned, and the Autobot clones inform their comrades that, quote-unquote, the original pirates that colonized this place plundered the surrounding planets and hid all the stolen proton energy. It's relayed to everyone at this point that the energy is just as powerful as plasma energy, which, for context in case that sounds familiar, folks, is the same energy that destroyed both Cybertron and Mars earlier in the series. This is not a good thing, Andy.
No, absolutely.
We then get a formal introduction to the clone bots, and it's implied during this that they have some kind of relationship with the Decepticon versions. We are told through a flashback sequence and some storytelling that, quote, we grew up together on the same planet and we were best friends. It was Galvatron that caused the rift between us. It was before we became clone warriors of the Autobots. We, Fastlane and Cloudraker for point of reference, were going away to develop our skills, and so were Pounce and Wingspan. End quote. The story continues, and we discover that it was during this period of time that Fastlane and Cloudraker came upon the skull that is now the focus of this story in the episode. And they soon were able to meet up again with their friends Wingspan and Pounce, only to discover that their former friends had joined the Decepticons and had half of the skull stolen from them in that initial scuffle. So during the flashback sequence here, there's an interesting line of dialogue, Andy, which I wanted to sort of pinpoint on, because it may not come back to mean anything ultimately, or it may just be a translation thing, but it was a very specific way this was phrased, because the now Decepticon clones referred to themselves in the flashback sequence as, quote, "We've been reborn as Decepticon clones." Which is a very unique way of phrasing that, but like I say, it may just be a translation thing, but I thought that was a very, very poignant line. And like you were saying a few minutes ago, is this going to allude to there being even more clones? Is this a bigger thing? But potential spoiler, folks, probably not.
Yeah, I suspect that that's just kind of a slightly odd turn of phrase due to translation or whatever, but yeah, you never know. I was still more caught up on like the time frame of this, because if Galvatron was the one responsible, it's like, well, he's not been around all that long in the grand scheme of things, so how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the timeline now, because obviously the Japanese timeline we're in now, the years are sort of a bit more mixed up.
Well, and I mean, again, even in terms of like Transformers the movie never happened, it's like, who is Galvatron in this continuity, like versus Megatron? I don't know, but
So then there is a transmission to Maximus from Twincast, who we hear has been in contact with the Autobot double agent Punch, and reports that the Decepticons have located the proton energy. And at this point, the Headmasters just immediately go out to meet them in battle at some old ruiny type location. Upon arrival, we hear Galvatron mention that on the map it indicates there's some kind of pyramid, and that's what they need to find. Now at this point, the Autobot Headmasters arrive, we have a very quick battle, Galvatron loses the skull coin, and the Autobots get it, they go, oh dear, as it were. But in this time, the battle is still going on before they're gone properly. And this gives Highbrow time to study the skull and figure out what to do next. There's a fun line of dialogue in this instance where he says, quote, "I don't think Galvatron has the intelligence to interpret what the map says." Which I just thought, nice little dig there.
Yeah, well, it's also funny because I think it's in the following episode where like Galvatron's literally just like, I am so intelligent, and it's just like everyone else is just there like, nah, Galvatron's kind of dumb.
So I have that thing of like, sure, boss, sure.
Yes, you are, absolutely. Please don't kick me again.
After roaming briefly through the ruins, Highbrow comes across another skull. In this instance, though, it's kind of like an actual skull head, or like a bust, if you will. I was trying to think of a better way to describe it. But it's on the ground, and notably, there is a space in the forehead of this skull that looks very similar to the coin that they're holding. When the skull coin is placed in that space on the bust, a signal is transmitted that Highbrow picks up that raises a giant pyramid from beneath the sand. So Galvatron turns out wasn't wrong about that. But now, Highbrow must figure out how to open the door. There's a random skeleton sort of next to the door as well, but a sneak attack from Galvatron at this point just cuts off all thought as to what the heck is going on, as Highbrow is downed. He is then taken back to Battleship Maximus by Twincast. But that happens while the Decepticons are trying to open the door. And this is funny, because Galvatron can't blast it open. People are trying to punch it open. So much so, Andy, we later see he actually called in Scorponok to try and open the door and bash it open with the giant claws. Still couldn't work.
Yeah, it's almost as if you need some kind of key to open it, Galvatron. I mean, again, as if to prove Highbrow's point. It's just like, rather than try anything nuanced or anything like technical to try and open this door, no, we'll just hit it with increasingly hard and big things, and I'm sure it'll work eventually.
I would like to give a shout out to this narrator line of dialogue of, in order to break through the door, Galvatron has mobilized Scorponok.
Yeah, I bet Scorponok loved that call as well. Of just like, yes, what master plan am I going to be involved in today? It's like, can you just come and hit this door really hard? And it's like, okay, Is this your master plan, Emperor? Like, yes, please hit this thing really hard.
Scorponok's just like, just bide my time, just bide my time.
Yeah, it's like, this will be over soon, I'm sure.
We then go to Battleship Maximus, where we see Highbrow is recuperating on the ship, but is trying to join the dots together in his mind as to what does the skull mean? What does the signal mean? Then he suddenly has a eureka moment and realizes the signal emanating from the skull on the ground is the same from the one in the ship in space. So up they go, traveling on Shoki and Yukikaze of the train bots, as he and Daniel go to the graveyard to grab the skull from the bow of the ship, although their departure is noticed by Sound Blaster and he pursues them. While on the journey, Highbrow notices that Daniel has brought his video game light gun that we talked about in the last podcast, the Nez Zapper, if you will, with him. At which point, it's like, Daniel, mate, we're not playing Cowboys or whatever. Like, what are you doing?
I mean, look, he's probably getting sponsorship money from this video game tie-in, and so he's just like, yeah, if I get this, if I bring the light gun again, then maybe I'll get another kickback off of the video game sales.
But while Highbrow is interested in it, it's having a little look for himself. He actually switches out the cartridge in the gun, making it, let's call it like it is, Andy, a fake toy gun into a real laser gun.
Yeah, I mean,
that's an upgrade.
It works out in the end, but also, Highbrow, why would you do that? Like, have you not seen like Daniel handling like anything and everything in this series? Like, this is a highly like questionable strategy.
So they manage to get the skull off the ship, but then Sound Blaster appears, holding them at gunpoint, if you will, except for Daniel, who is hidden around the side of the ship that Sound Blaster can't see. Sound Blaster is demanding information, wants to know what is the connection between this pyramid, the door, this skull you're grabbing from the ship. He wants to know everything. And at this point, Highbrow is trying to whisper to Daniel, sort of trying to go like, use the gun. And Daniel, not smartened up to the situation, is like, Highbrow, it's a toy. It's a gaming gun. And he goes, no, it's not. I made it real. Which then, at this point, Sound Blaster notices there's some whispering going on. He just shoots Highbrow in the shoulder, and Daniel has a moment and just goes, ah! And just shoots Sound Blaster. And then we never see Sound Blaster again, Andy, so I assume he's dead.
I mean, that would be, yeah. I mean, this episode is not called like Sound Blaster dies, so I'm assuming he's okay. But who can say at this point?
We then go back down to Pirate Planet. Battleship Maximus is now joining in the fight, and while everyone is occupied fighting, Highbrow connects the skull from the ship onto that skeleton that I mentioned that was by the pyramid door earlier, and Eureka! The door opens. Highbrow and Daniel head inside, but the Decepticon clones follow them. But it was the Autobot clones that ended up coming to their rescue, having recovered from the stuff they had gone through earlier. They literally shoot their former friends in the back, I wrote down, and the Decepticons ultimately run away. Well, run away from the pyramid, excuse me, I'm trying to say. But outside, the battle is not over, because Scorponok is transformed into robot mode. And this is the prompt, Andy, for, right, we must sell some more Fortress Maximus toys and more Combiner-like things. So cue a transformation sequence. We get the full-blown Master Sword sequence, the opening theme and all. It's a great transformation sequence. I forgot how much I loved it in the few weeks it's been since we last saw it.
Yeah, it also, like, in an episode that's been pretty good, like, animation quality wise, it kind of really fitted in. That was also a point of just like, we've had episodes that have been a bit ropey and then they roll that out, and it just makes what comes before be like, oh yeah, this was kind of a ropey one, whereas this was like, yeah, all of this kind of fits together quite nicely. Like, it kind of goes to show that this had a little bit of love put into it. But yeah, it's a real cool sequence, especially when it has time to do the full-blown thing. It's like, I realize you're kind of padding for time, but it's kind of worth it when it works out like this.
Now, as we have been seeing in recent episodes, discounting the fact we know what the weakness is because of the subtitle error on the DVD, we're gradually seeing that Scorponok is trying to protect a certain area on him. And this is emphasized when the Master Sword, being held by Maximus, he slashes Scorponok with it, and it causes him to, I think the subtitles literally said, Andy, "You're bleeding energy, Scorponok." Which is an interesting phrase in the context of this, but nonetheless, Scorponok is bleeding.
I mean, I feel like the phrase might have been "you're leaking energy," but which was sort of
fair, actually.
It sounds a little less impressive, but yeah, it was. Again, it's one of those things you don't really see in Transformers very often. Like, normally, laser blasts and kind of damage are pretty sort of superficial. And so, like, I kind of winced a bit at the fact that, like, I mean, it's not just that he kind of, yeah, it's not a flesh wound. Like, he gets slashed, like, right across the stomach, basically, and there's just, like, all this energy / energon / whatever it is just gushing out, and I'm like, ooh, that's gonna hurt. Like, that was really smart. And yeah, you don't get many moments like that in Transformers, so I kind of appreciated just how sort of visceral it was.
And it's another example, based on what we've been seeing in recent episodes, of Transformers feeling like it's growing up a bit.
Yeah.
The narrator at this point, given that the Decepticons have now retreated, says, "That's the end of another fight. But what about the space pirates' super energy?" As the Autobots gather themselves at the end of this battle, Highbrow reveals the following, quote unquote, "The space pirates' energy doesn't exist."
End credits.
Yep.
Cue the song.
"Look there," he says, pointing at a big stone sort of tablet thing with an engraving on it. "It's a message from the space pirates." Quoting them now. "We space pirates have plundered the cosmos for a super energy. It is stored on this planet. But if any mistake is made in handling the energy, you will be unable to control it and will be destroyed." End quote. And as this is being said, we, the viewer, are seeing a flashback of a planet which we come to find out is this exact same planet they're on, which looks green and prosperous and very, very similar to Earth. But then it gradually becomes a desert-like wasteland, implying someone mishandled that energy, and look what happened. This emphasized further with a further quote from the stone of, "Only a swift demise awaits those who misuse the energy."
And this is why you put this warning on the entrance to the pyramid, not deep inside, because clearly somebody read this after they screwed up and was like, oh, well, if you'd have told me this earlier in the instruction manual, maybe none of this would have happened.
At this point, we see that Battleship Maximus is leaving Pirate Planet, and everyone is reflecting on what they discovered on that very planet. But the narrator then says, quote, "The Autobot clones are saddened at the thought of the Decepticon clones' betrayal." And then, because we know Andy, it's exactly what anyone wants to see when they feel sad, Daniel and Wheelie walk up to them. And Daniel says, "Autobot clones, cheer up! You've got new friends now!" And then Wheelie just adds to that by going, "Yeah!"
And that's why the Autobot clones were never seen again, because they left the ship instantly.
And the clones just go, "You're right, let's fight them," which I assume they meant the Decepticons, not Daniel and Wheelie.
I mean, that was my thought as well, of like, I'm kind of with you on this, but maybe that's a little bit of an overreaction to this whole thing.
Fortress then speaks up and says, "Twincast, you're sure that Galvatron is making his way back to Char?" "Absolutely, sir," says Twincast. "Right then, we'll follow them," says the Autobot commander. The narrator then adds, "Fortress Maximus tracks the Decepticons as they return to their home planet. However, the war is about to begin." And then the end credits roll.
Mm-hmm. And I have a bit of a problem with that ending, because spoilers for the next episode, they don't follow them back to Char. They just bugger off home to Athenia. And it's like, well, why? Like, you've got like a perfect opportunity. Like, Scorponok is leaking. You know, you've won this battle. It's like, maybe now is a good time to like press home your advantage. But no, instead they just kind of like go home for no particular reason. Maybe they left the gas on. I don't know. But anyway, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will get to that, because it does... This is why I mentioned earlier about the whole 13 planets thing, because it does feel like parts of the story, maybe, not to say they skipped things, but it does feel like there are a few little pieces of the puzzle missing at this point. Nothing major, but yeah, overall, that was the episode. Like I said, really enjoyed it. But before we get to our full review, as it were, of the episode, Andy, let's delve into the TF Wiki, because there may be some additional notes included on the website that perhaps provide some clarity on certain things that we have mentioned. So to begin with, continuity notes. Galvatron's unknown master plan was first hinted in during the episode Fight to the Death on Planet Hive. I guess it was, yeah, because he was talking about the energy and trying to gather it up.
Yeah, that's kind of where things kind of kicked off a little bit.
The existence of Scorponok's weak spot will be revealed in the coming episodes, as we have talked about in the previous podcast. Daniel's light gun previously appeared in the Find Scorponok's weak spot episode, so there you go. As in Fight to the Death on Planet Beehive, Scorponok takes a slash to the chest from the Master Sword and immediately retreats. Just as in that episode, you might think that's simply 1980s cartoon villain logic, but just wait for an upcoming episode. In terms of trivia notes now, Highbrow switches Daniel's gun to live rounds without telling him. That's shockingly bad gun safety.
I mean, it really is, especially in the hands of Daniel of all people. I mean, even more broadly, just the fact, I was kind of shocked at the fact that they actually kind of deploy Daniel in combat here. Like, I realize, I get the situation, and Highbrow's like, this is the only way I can kind of get one up and turn this 1v1 into like a 2v1. But still, like, you're giving a kid a gun and saying, like, hey, shoot the big robot. Like, that's maybe not great kind of guardianship of Daniel. As much as I like to rag on Daniel, it's like, don't tell his dad that you did that. Like, that doesn't seem like a good idea.
Daniel's innocent in this instance.
Yeah, exactly.
So, interesting thing here in relation to animation and technical errors, which I'll bring up. In the first scene of the episode, Wingspan and Pounce each speak a line, but Pounce is animated and is speaking both of them. Which in hindsight, I do remember that when I was trying to write down the dialogue. Consequently, both the Omni Productions dub and the Region 2 DVD subtitles, which we're watching from, rework the two lines into one. Okay, there we go, so that clarifies that then.
Yeah.
Another trivia note. When Highbrow checks out the skull and wanders off to follow the map, why do the other headmasters just stand there and watch him instead of going to follow him?
Who can say? They weren't getting the same appearance fee for this episode, so we're like, no, we're not going anywhere.
When it comes to foreign localization, Andy, the Omni Productions dub titled the episode "The Mystery of the Pirate Ship." A couple of additional notes here. The Autobot... I forgot, because the Omni Production dub changes names, doesn't it? So here we go, right. The Autobot clones are referred to collectively as Cloudraker, and the Decepticon clones as Wingspan.
See, weirdly, I actually kind of like that, the idea that they're clones so they only have one name. I mean, terrible for your toy sales, because even if they're identical, you want to give them different names. To be fair, they do have... Again, it's why I don't understand why they're called clones, because they have different, like, transformation modes. So, I have many questions. But no, I would have quite liked it if they just had the same name and just like, yeah, we're clones. We are all Windraker or like Lawnmower or whatever.
Also, I mean, you mentioned they're not the same because they have different transformations. They also, I think it's when there's a shot of the back of them at one point, you can actually see that their backs look different because of what they transform into.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. It's a strange thing. I guess they just couldn't think of a better name for them. So whatever.
Also relating to the Omni Productions dub. A section of the fight when the Autobot headmasters first reach the ruins appears to be without sound effects.
Oops.
The Shout Factory subtitle, that being the USA DVD release, Char is spelt differently. It's just a typo, I don't know how they did it. But additionally, when performing their Master Jump, the Autobot headmasters mistakenly call themselves Horrorcons.
I mean, it's easily done, I suppose. Happens to us all.
In terms of additional foreign localization notes, in Italian, this episode was called The Space Pirate Mystery, which I like as a title. And in Mandarin, it was Secret of the Space Pirate Ship.
You see, I feel like if they'd taken the ship bit and just called it Secret of the Space Pirates, that sounds really good. They were nearly there.
There you go. So close, as it were. So close. And that about concludes this episode, Andy. We've actually motored through that far quicker than I thought I was going to, but I genuinely had a really good time with this episode. We've had, I'll say, a mixed bag of episodes in recent podcasts that we've discussed, but overall they've been all right. But this is definitely one of the stronger ones on this planet-hopping saga we've been going to.
Yeah, and I feel like, as we've sort of alluded to up front, this feels like it's not really... It is part of the whole planet hopping thing, but it also feels like it's not, because it's really starting to hammer in on its central points. Like, this is not just a filler, like, we have to defeat the Decepticons. It's like there's clear progress in what the deal is with Scorponok and his weakness. There's kind of, as much as the Autobots are still losing quite a lot at the moment, like, this is a victory for them. They make some progress, like, they do some actual damage to Scorponok. Like, it feels like a potential turning point of just like, this is not all hope is not lost. Like, hey, even Daniel can like murder a Decepticon now, so anything is possible in this world. So yeah, it feels like even kind of the episodes we covered on the last podcast kind of started to have that vibe of like, this is not just filler, this is building towards like the core sort of turning points and talking points of the series, and this just feels like a furthering of that. And I think that lends it a little bit more, because I think you pull that away from it and it's just like, this is a nice looking filler episode, but it feels like, no, we've seen some important stuff here, and so it kind of makes it worthwhile.
Completely agree. Before we move on to the next episode then, any additional notes that you have or anything else that you picked up on that you think is worth bringing up?
No, not at all. It did just make me wish that the jump starters had been in G1 Transformers some more, because I had the Twin Twist toy and he was kind of cool. But sadly never to be. Got some good play in the G1 comics though, so it's not all bad.
I will say that Twin Twist is a good name as well.
Also, yeah, Twin Twist can be hard to say, but yeah, it's a very good name. It's also a good name for like a toy that kind of like can jump up. Like you pulled him back and he just like flew forward and then just like transformed and like flipped up. And the idea is he was supposed to flip and like land on his feet, which happened like 1 in 1,000 times. Like in the commercials, it looked great because it's like, oh my god, he just like flips up and then just carries on going in robot mode. But more often than not, it would just like fall over, and it was never quite as impressive. But
just fall over in a heap, if you will.
yeah, it would just like usually end up flat on its face, and it's like, well, perhaps on brand for the Autobots in this Headmasters continuity, but not quite what they were going for.
With that being said, let's move on to the next episode 24 of Transformers Headmasters, The Death of Ultra Magnus, or as it is noted on the TF Wiki, Ultra Magnus dies. The narrator begins with, one day at Earth's northern Cybertron outpost, which by Cybertron I think they mean Autobot in this context.
Yeah, I got really confused because I thought, like, what Cybertron was like my first thought, and then it took a while to like, oh, okay, I think I see where we're going here.
An unbelievable accident occurs. What we see is the Decepticon Headmasters engaging in a stealth mission, sneaking into the Autobots' northern outpost on Earth in their small robot forms, and successfully eliminating a whole ton of, to put it bluntly, generic-looking robots, but without alerting the main Autobot force. We saw a lot of murder here, Andy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a strange definition of accident, if ever there was one. It's like, oops, I slipped and laser fired all these Autobots. Oops. But yeah, like, I mean, again, it's sort of continuing that trend of recent episodes where we've really had a ramping up of like, not just like, oh, the Decepticons are evil, to like, no, they're just mass murdering people at this point, and there's no kind of putting any kind of sheen on it or turning the camera away. It's like no, just watch them murder all these dudes.
We then see Weirdwolf reporting in to Scorponok. And to clarify, when I say Scorponok, I don't mean just like the base as a whole with like Galvatron inside. I mean as in formerly known as Zarak Scorponok, like for the first half of the series. Like, we're talking the head honcho hit. No pun intended. Head honcho. So he says that their successful acquisition of the base is complete. And Scorponok very much implies that after biding his time, now is the time to strike. Meanwhile, Battleship Maximus has returned to Athenia, where they are still concerned over Galvatron's ultimate plan for the energy that the Decepticons have been gathering across all the planets they've been plundering. Highbrow is continuing to try and decode what was on the Beastmaster's arm, as it were. What is the weak spot of Scorponok, as it were. That being said, in the dialogue during this scene, we actually, for once, I'm put Andy in brackets, get a bit of intelligent thinking by the Autobots, as they're trying to analyse where the Decepticons might be heading to next, based on how fast they're travelling. Because Brainstorm notes that their return trip speed is actually 17.5% slower than their outgoing journey, implying they've collected a lot of energy that they're stockpiling on board, meaning that they're heavier. There's one question I have about this, Andy.
What's that?
How does that apply to weightlessness in space?
I don't know. Like, I mean, that is genuinely like, yeah, like I'm not quite sure. I mean, I guess there's maybe some kind of thrust question, because, you know, you can still use thrusters in space to, like, move your trajectory and move faster, so I guess it still makes sense. I mean, I was just reeling from the fact that this felt like the start of some, like, horrific GCSE maths question of just, like, you know, Scorponok took, like, 2 days to reach planet X. On his way back, he's 17.5% slower. Like, how long has it taken Scorponok to return to planet Char? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, don't make me do maths. Go away.
But that said, though, aside from like the potential logic flaw there in the weightlessness thing, I actually really like this because it actually did make the Autobots seem very intelligent for at least a minute.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, it's one of those things that this, like, G1 Transformers doesn't really normally do. Like, everything's normally pretty kind of cut and dried, and like to have a bit of actual kind of maths and science to it. Like, it's always pleasing when it feels like there's a bit more thought to it than just like, we're just going to throw out another planet name or something just because, I don't know, plot reasons.
At the same time this scene is going on Char, the Decepticon home planet, Galvatron announces the plan he has been building up to this entire time, which he's saying this in front of Scorponok, and Scorponok's already deduced the plan. And apparently the plan, Andy, is to incorporate the Earth into his system. End quote.
Yeah, this feels like when you kind of like get some kind of like corporate keynote speech, and it's just like the big like final reveal of like, you know, the company's big plan, and it's just a bunch of like jargon speak, and everyone's just like, yeah, good, great plan.
Yeah.
We can do this, whatever this might be. Great plan.
But of course, we need clarification, Andy. So Galvatron clarifies this in the way only he can, with the following dialogue. Quote, "Exactly. I will incorporate the Earth in its entirety. Then I will possess unparalleled power and control the entire universe. That's why I've worked so hard. What do you think of my plan? Brilliant, isn't it? With my intelligence and power, I will rule for eternity."
I mean, gotta love the self-confidence, at least. Like,
I've still got no idea what the plan is.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea that everyone else just like whispering each other to like, did you get that? Because I don't really. What are we doing? Okay.
But as this is being said, we occasionally cut to Scorponok's face, and you can see a little gleam in his eye as he is being told this. So he's clearly very happy with what is happening. That said, all the specifics are just kind of not said, just to put that out there. But we then cut to another room, seemingly on Char somewhere, and we have a conversation involving Sixshot and Galvatron, which I will attempt, Andy, to recite in its entirety. Galvatron. I see. You're telling me not to forgive Scorponok. Sixshot responds with. What voice should I do today for Sixshot? I don't know what I'm going to do now I've said that. It seems to me that he's... No, wait, he's a ninja, isn't he? He can't sound like that. It seems to me that he's concocting some elaborate scheme or other. Don't you think I realise that? That's why I spoke up so openly about my plan. Forgive me. But will he agree to your plan, Lord Galvatron? I don't care. I know what that damn Scorponok is scheming. I won't allow such betrayal. Nobody stands in the way of my plans to incorporate such enormous power. Of course. But so Lord Galvatron's great plan may proceed smoothly, I will personally ensure the annihilation of the Earth's Autobots. I expect nothing less. But we must not give Scorponok any advantage. I will take care of this for you. Now, it's an important thing to note there, Andy, because we've now established that Galvatron all this time, as we suspected, quite frankly, and based on his return, has basically just used Scorponok in this instance. Has always known he's going to be plotting something in the background. So we've got that firmly established now after it not really being mentioned properly for so darn long.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a really good sort of couple of scenes for establishing that whole dynamic of, like, they're both prepared to double cross each other. They both know that the other one is going to try and double cross them or kind of, otherwise subvert their plan. But the thing we still don't really know is, like, to what extent they are actually aware of what the other is doing. It's like, Galvatron's very happy to say, like, oh yeah, I know what Scorponok's plotting. It's like, well, do you though? And I mean, again, as discussed, I'm not entirely sure that Zarek knows exactly what Galvatron is plotting because it doesn't really make much sense. So yeah, like, there's that dynamic has been ever since kind of, the reveals of Zarek. That's been, like, the interesting dynamic. I mean, it's kind of like it's a massive step up on the kind of Megatron and Starscream days where, like, Starscream's always threatening to do something but never really has the chops to actually do it. Whereas, like, that Zarek's got the smarts and the outright power, and he's got, like, his own sort of army of headmasters to do it. So yeah, it's kind of, again, this is a big sort of, like, we're coming to the head, with every pun intended, of a bunch of things here, because this is really starting to ramp up to the point where something's got to give. Like, either Galvatron's gonna get screwed over, or, like, Scorponok is, like, something's gonna happen here, and it's a question of kind of what and when.
So you mentioned Scorponok. Let's look at the other side of this conversation now, because elsewhere on Char, Scorponok contacts Weird Wolf, who is still on Earth. The following dialogue exchange is as follows. Scorponok. Wolf, it was the right strategy sending you ahead to Earth. Weird Wolf responds with, on your orders, sir. Scorponok responds, we have done all that Galvatron has asked. Now is the time to act on our own. What do you mean? Galvatron will only lead the Decepticons to failure. I must take command. Interesting. So you'll take over the Decepticons? Calm down. A cautious approach will ensure success. I still have to complete my master plan. And remember, we have enemies everywhere. Of course, then we'll slaughter them all. Don't get carried away. First, we must locate the Autobots' energy sources. Only then can we take over Earth. Why attack the Autobots? Why not raid the Decepticon energy sources instead? But if we only attack the Decepticon bases, that'll only make an enemy of Galvatron. Now I see. I didn't think of that. My mistake. If possible, I want to make Galvatron attack the Autobots. I understand, sir. Then the narrator comes in and says, Scorponok has finally revealed where his ambitions lie, but there is a sense of unease among the Decepticons. So we've now got Scorponok's point of view in this, Andy, and very, very soon we're going to be getting this big coming together in some way, and I am very excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also feel like Zarak is probably regretting telling Weird Wolf this plan, because he's just like, no, not now. Like, calm down. It's just like, it's just like telling a kid that you're about to go to the candy store, and it's just like, no, not after lunch. I said after lunch we're going. It's just like trying to set expectations. Also, do you think only like his close friends call him Wolf? Like, because I don't feel I feel like I've not seen anybody else just call him Wolf to this point.
I feel like he was referred to Wolf in maybe one or two other episodes. Because I think it was actually a TF Wiki note many podcasts ago now at this point, where it was acknowledged that they were sort of called by their shortened names, but it wasn't necessarily a regular thing that occurs.
Yeah, because I didn't recall it myself previously, and it's like, what do we call Mind Wipe? Do we just call him Wipe? Because that's...
Mind!
Good, Mind, yeah, that's why I'm just like, yeah, you can't call Weird Wolf just, well, you could just call him Weird, I suppose.
That's what it was now you mentioned it. It was Skull Cruncher was renamed to Skull, I think.
Yeah, you see, that's cool. That's a cool name. You can be called Skull as your shortened name, but like Wipe, just like, yeah, Mind Wipe's getting the short end of the deal here, is all I'm thinking.
Meanwhile, on Earth, we see Six-Shot addressing a bunch of Decepticons, saying the following. Listen up, you lot. We are going to conquer the Earth. Any Autobots standing in our way must die. But you must leave Ultra Magnus to me. I'll knock him out, even if it challenges my ninja honor.
Always about the ninja thing, isn't it?
I know, right?
Every time, like, did I tell you I'm a ninja? It's like, yeah, once or twice. Also, what's his beef with Ultra Magnus? Has there been any actual like previous beef, or is he just is he just after like gunning for the top guy? Because I don't recall there being. I feel like there have been like face-offs between them, but I don't remember it being particularly kind of.
I want to say that earlier in the season, there was definitely like a bit of a sort of butting of heads between the two of them, because it was when Ultra Magnus was first introduced to him. So I think it was more that maybe because Six-Shot couldn't defeat him, it's just kind of like that sort of like that everlasting thing of, if I can just do this, like I'll have my honor fully restored or something.
Yeah, no, that's maybe it. Yeah, I just couldn't remember whether there'd been any previous here or whether it's just Six-Shot just like choosing his prey.
I mean, actually, funny enough, I think he says, for the purposes for the benefit of the audio listeners grabbing the actual DVD set, that on part of the packaging they actually do focus on the fact Six-Shot and Ultra Magnus have a bit of a tussle, so it is certainly a highlighted element in the story.
And I mean, for people listening to the audio, that looks like quite the romantic clinch between Six-Shot and Ultra Magnus on that packaging. It's like they look quite cuddly there.
So I mentioned that Six-Shot was talking to a bunch of Decepticons. He has mobilized Tripticon, aka in this show Dino Base, the Combaticons, the Terracons, and the Horrorcons, then initiates an all-out attack against an Autobot energy facility, which we find out in the next scene, Andy, is in Miami, randomly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really funny scene where just like Ultra Magnus is just like basically like, let's go to Miami. It's like, are we clubbing? Like, what are we doing? Is this like party weekend for Ultra Magnus? Because that's not really his deal normally. But yeah, it's just like out of nowhere. It's just like, hey, let's go to Miami. And it's just like, okay, cool. All right, let's do this.
During this attack, we're seeing lots of death, just the remnants of it, quite frankly. Clearly, a lot has happened. The generic workers, once again, are literally being annihilated. That said, Andy, there was a random comedic moment involving Double Cross and like the Horrorcons in this, where Double Cross's two heads from the Double Cross from the Monster Bots, as we established about in the last episode when they randomly showed up. that Double Cross's two heads couldn't decide which way to run or who to attack, and then that led to like a bit of an awkward battle. So once again, a really cool new Transformer, or one that we've not seen in a while, being reintroduced, just looks naff.
yeah, I do feel, at least I feel like that was one of those, like, one of the little tech spec things for like that character, that like that's the disadvantage of having two heads, is that he basically has two brains and sometimes they are in disagreement with each other. But yeah, not the most kind of impressive way to show them off, but hey, he's still a cool Transformer, it's fine.
At this point, word is soon reaching Ultra Magnus about Autobot City, who, unwilling to burden Fortress with any further problems unnecessarily, quote-unquote, he says, he dispatches the Trainbots and the Technobots to deal with the threat. Now, quick continuity note here as well, because Magnus does acknowledge the fact that the Trainbots have just got back from their mission with Fortress, but he said this is urgent and really needs them to do this. So I do like the fact they at least acknowledge that, Andy, because when it came to the sort of the timeline thing at the beginning of the episode and end of the last episode that we were talking about, at least it establishes this is all happening in pretty close proximity to that.
Yeah, because it did feel like there was maybe some kind of gap and that something had happened that we'd missed out on, but no, it's just weird decision making on the Autobots' part, basically.
At this point in the episode, Highbrow is still trying to decode this, Andy. What is Scorponok's weak spot? He's got to the point where he needs Daniel and Wheelie to help him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, maybe all of my like praise for him previously of like, no, he's trying his best. He's he's on it. Don't worry. Is like was maybe overstated, because it's like, well, if that's who you're gonna rely on, it's like surely there's somebody else you can ask. I mean, again, it's my classic plea of like, where is Perceptor? Like, what's happened to him? Because clearly, like, he would probably sort this out in like 2 minutes flat.
So obviously, as we're alluding to here, not much is happening. But Highbrow says, you know what? I think we need to start this process all over again. We need to start fresh. And Daniel and Wheelie are both just like, what? No, please. So that's them done for the rest of the episode for now.
Yeah. Well, at least it keeps Daniel and Wheelie busy. So
we then see Fortress having a conversation with the double agent Punch, who is informing him of Galvatron's movements, and he confers with the other Autobots on the situation, and even that there's a spike in the room. But the bigger point, Andy, which implies, whether you saw the episode title or not, that this is going to get serious, is that the often hot-headed, kind of over-eager with Chrome Dome and such Hardhead, even he admits he's having bad feelings about everything that's happening, and this is emphasized more by his body literally shaking with nerves, and that stuns everyone else in the room into complete silence.
Yeah, that was a very awkward, like, overly long shot following that of, like, everyone just looking at Hardhead being like, what's wrong with you? And it's just like, I get you want to linger on that, but then you get about like 5-6 seconds of everyone just staring at him, and it just feels really awkward. And it's like, oh no, this is not good.
Just that moment of like, hey Hardhead, you okay?
Yeah.
Did you drink too much Energon?
Yeah, it's like someone roll out the karaoke again, like cheer Hardhead up, please.
Just said he drank too much Energon. He's got the Energon shakes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, because there's not really any context for that, it is a bit like, yeah, as if you just been on the juice a bit much.
Back on Earth, the battle is going badly for the Autobots, to say the least. On the outskirts of Autobot City, Ultra Magnus is confronted by Six-Shot himself, who is just attacking everything in his sight, but his main goal is to get to Ultra Magnus. We then get a little dialogue exchange here of, I am Six-Shot, your escort to hell.
By the way, like, one, he doesn't mention he's a ninja in that exact moment, which makes it cool. And two, like, that's a really good introductory line when you're coming to fight somebody. It's like, the trouble is he then kind of undoes it because he mentions hell again in his next line. It's like, oh no, you've overdone it now. You've overplayed the hell bit. But that was a really good intro line. Like, you should stick with just that one.
It was so good, that intro, and just the visual as well, because I think Ultra Magnus is just like literally judo chopped a building in half or something, like a big dome, and then Six Shot just appears from it and says it. It's like, this is money right here.
Yeah, it's a good wrestling intro.
And then when it comes to Ultra Magnus, for a voice, let's just adopt a British commander or something. So imagine like, damn you, ninja! Think you can take me on? And Six Shot responds with, only one of us can rule the Earth, and here is your one-way ticket to hell. Like you said, he overused hell, so good job, Six Shot. As the battle is unfolding, despite Magnus trying his best, Six Shot is one step ahead of him. You can tell this battle is also going to be very serious, Andy, aside from the fact we know what's ultimately going to happen, because there's a brand new song playing in the background with lyrics that are not being translated and whatnot, so I've got no idea what's being said, but we've never heard it before. That means something big is going to happen.
I was hype as soon as that song started, because I'm like, it's a new song. Like, this is, like, again, this perhaps comes from, like, years of being steeped in watching anime. When you get an all-new song, it's just like, okay, this is important. And then the song has lyrics, and then you know they really mean business, because, like, you've actually written a song with words about the thing that is going to happen. And I have no idea what those words are. I'm sure they're really cool, but who cares? It's a new song. It's a new insert song. Let's go.
So Magnus is not doing well. We even see Metroplex at this point attempting to intervene, but this is when Trypticon gets involved and stops him from helping him out. At this point, the train bots now arrive, and they manage to convince Magnus that they really need to let Fortress know, mate. You know, sir, not mate, sir. We really need to let Fortress know because this isn't going too well. Magnus agrees. The news is quickly sent to Athenia. Fortress and the Headmasters head for Earth aboard battleship Maximus. Now, in past times, Andy, during this series, they could have got to Earth pretty quickly, but Fortress actually notes the space bridge is out of action, so they've got to fly there as quick as they can. Despite the fact we know the space bridge is destroyed, but still out of action.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it still counts. I mean, that was a really nice little bit of continuity, whereas, like, was this all pre-planned in the scripting of this, or was this just like a really convenient, like, oh, thank God we blew up the space bridges, otherwise it'd be really awkward to try and kind of explain this episode? Because, yeah, like, it felt like a really good moment of just, like, because I almost had that exact thought of just like, well, I guess I'll just use the space bridge, and then they're just like, no, we can't. I'm like, oh my God, you're right, the space bridge is out of action. Oh no. And it, like, you know, that all of this kind of segment is all really good. Like, the whole bit of just, like, Metroplex, etc., kind of trying to, like, weigh in on it and sort of being kind of blocked and thwarted. The whole idea of, like, you know, they didn't want to get Fortress involved, and now it's just like, nah, this is pretty serious now. We've got to escalate this. Like, got to phone the duty manager and let them know that something bad is going on at Autobot City. And like that whole sequence is just like, again, with the awesome new song on top of it, of just like, oh yeah, this is stuff is going down here, and like, you know, this is all. And again, this is weirdly where, like, as much as I poke fun of this episode title for being a massive spoiler, it kind of works in its favor, because you sort of know what's coming at this point. It's like, oh no, this is not a fake out. But like, it kind of really ramps up that sort of desperation of all of this, because you know that, like, this is dire straits time, and it's all kind of going horribly wrong for the Autobots.
Yeah, this is one of those instances where, I mean, you've already said it once or twice, I've said it once or twice, not a fan of the fact it's a giant spoiler for the episode title, but in this instance, the journey to seeing how it's going to happen is the draw here, and so far, it's more than worth it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we even get to the Ultra Magnus breakdancing a bit when he's trying to avoid Six Shot's fire, which is like, maybe that's why he wanted to go to Miami. But I digress.
So I mentioned the last episode, as in the episode we recapped earlier in this particular podcast. Did Daniel kill Sound Blaster? No is the answer to that. He turns up in this episode. And he relays the fact to Galvatron that the Autobots are on their way to Earth from Athenia. The Decepticon leader is not too pleased about this, and then suggests sending Scorponok to stop the Autobots. Sound Blaster, kind of shocked by this, is sort of being like, look, I reckon I can make this work. If you kind of tell Scorponok, hey, do you want to try and kill Fortress? Do you want to get revenge? Because you want revenge, right? Go wild. Have fun. Kill him. Just stop the Autobots. That's the plan they're going with. And Galvatron literally says to Scorponok when saying, go to Earth and kill them. He says, giving free rein to your hatred and crush the Autobots once and for all. Of which Scorponok is kind of almost goes, really? It's like, sure, okay. I'll go to Earth. That works for me. So back with Ultra Magnus. He is in trouble. Six-Shot has multiplied himself into literally 6 different forms. It's a really cool sequence. And Ultra Magnus is just getting hit left, right, and center by shots, just physical attacks. Really, really not in a bad way. Magnus, during all of this, says the line as, I think at this point, Six-Shot's like in a tank mode or similar, just on top of Magnus. He just starts saying, not necessarily a British voice, but now that I've established it in this episode, I will die defending the Earth. He then lifts up the transformed Six-Shot off of his chest as he's doing that and just throws him away. At this point, we see that the Horicons are holding off Raiden, and Six-Shot has a surprise for us. He says, there's more to come from us. Final transform. The narrator then adds, Six-Shot has revealed his 6 fighting styles one after the other. And now, Wingwolf. This is the most feared of all. And what we get, Andy, is Six-Shot revealing, in essence, a hidden 7th transformation that he's got, which combines all of his... What's my place? His cloning ability, if you will, if we just use that kind of the shadow clone jutsu, if you're a fan of Naruto and anime circles, he has all the different clones in the different transformations he can do, combine into a 7th mode. This is wild, Andy. I had no idea this was a thing, and what a concept.
Yeah. Pretty sure you can't do that with the toy, though, disappointingly.
Oh, that sucks.
I mean, I don't think that you can have, like, a 7th transformation. Maybe if you buy 6 of Six-Shot, maybe then you can, like, combine them all. Maybe that's, like, the gimmick. But yeah, it's pretty damn cool. And he doesn't even have to mention he's a ninja to do it, so...
Yeah, I just legitimately didn't know that there was a 7th mode in Six-Shot, which I guess kind of asked the question, does he need to change his name?
I mean, yeah, it's just... Well, I mean, he's got Ninja Consultant on all his business cards. It'd be a pain to change it at this point, so...
Fair. Simultaneously, while this is going on, both Battleship Maximus and Scorponok arrive on Earth. Now, one of the things I didn't really highlight too well a few moments ago was that when Galvatron said to Scorponok, go kill Fortress, get your revenge, it was kind of with the idea that so that could be a way for Scorponok to actually contribute to the battle rather than just dossing off and doing whatever he wants. Unfortunately, that is exactly what happened. He does just doss off, quite frankly. And he ends up telepathically communicating with the Decepticon Headmasters, Weirdwolf specifically, to check up on the progress of what they are doing. And at this point, Andy, we see that they're sort of digging a hole inside of a base, because let's not forget, earlier in the episode, it was established that he wants to get the Autobots' energy. This is kind of the key element here. So we see that they are digging a hole inside the base. Back into the battle scene, the Autobots are arriving just as Magnus is being caught in just a plethora of laser fire from Wingwolf. The Battleship Maximus is flying overhead, the Headmasters are looking on. All of these shots are happening. Magnus is down on his chest. He literally gets shot in the back. He rolls over, because that's what you do, quite frankly. And then he just gets shot right in the middle of the chest. And there's a moment when the Headmasters know exactly what is about to happen. Magnus is down. He's really not moving pretty much at all. The enraged Headmasters basically go into anger mode, and they do the head formation of friendship in an angry way.
The head formation of anger.
There you go. And they just take it to Wingwolf. As is part of the course in Transformers, as we've established during this podcast, Andy, whenever a new combiner has to debut and look really cool, they have to have an ultimately naff way of being defeated. And he basically just gets knocked out the sky, and because of that, he sort of regresses back to his standard 6-shot form, and then just runs away.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he's done the job by that point, so, you know, why not? And yeah, like, I don't know, like, I guess some very angry people spinning at you will do that to you.
And now, Fortress is down on the ground. He's gone to Ultra Magnus. He's cradling him in his arms, looking at Magnus's broken body, quite frankly. It's just tattered and whatnot from all the battle. And then Magnus says the words, "Peace on Earth. The Autobots must defend the Earth." And then Ultra Magnus's head slumps forward, and Ultra Magnus has died. Fortress has a moment of disbelief, and then says, "We can't let Ultra Magnus's death be in vain. We must defend the Earth." Swept up in fury over what has happened. In fact, I think actually it was this point, Andy, where maybe the whole Wing Wolf thing I just mentioned happened, and then he gets hit away. Sort of my timelines are a bit mixed up here. But either way, the anger is still present with everyone over what has happened. We then fast forward. The battle has now ceased. Everything's gone away and such. The Autobots are outside Autobot City, or kind of around where it happened. And Ultra Magnus is sort of, in essence, sitting in a coffin, as it were. I think is it a funeral bier? Is it bier? I can't remember how you pronounce it. But kind of the sort of the carriage that a coffin may be on, as it were, when it's carried away. And the Autobots, as well as Spike, Carly, and Daniel is there. In case you're wondering, folks, if you had that on your bingo card, yes, Daniel is there. Daniel is looking on, and he's in tears once again. He's just shouting Ultra Magnus's name. He can't believe this is happening. Probably again at this point. He's just like, no, can this stop happening? Let alone the emotional damage. And at this point, a really cool touch happens. A really, really cool touch, which, in hindsight, Andy, I think it's something that's not really overly established in the series, but it was really cool kind of at the end of Ultra Magnus's journey in this story to know that this is kind of how he felt about it. Because Metroplex sort of appears and actually says, "I have a request that rather than Ultra Magnus being fired into space, can he be buried somewhere on the Earth, i.e. this planet, that he loved so much?" And Fortress and co basically go, "Yeah, 100% we can do that. That just sounds perfect." So they're then flying on Battleship Maximus, and they find just a really kind of small cave in a coastline, as it were. The sun's setting, it's a great view, and they just decide, this is the place. And we see the coffin of Ultra Magnus get, for want of a better word, fired out of the ship down to sort of the water below, sinks below the surface, and that is where Ultra Magnus is buried in Transformers Headmasters. The narrator then closes the episode as Battleship Maximus is sort of flying away from the location, saying, "A dignified burial. However, will Galvatron and Scorponok pursue their ambitions to control the Earth? Fortress and the Headmasters cannot predict what will happen. Will they be able to thwart the Decepticons' evil plans?" And the episode concludes, and we get a far too cheery ending credit song from what we have just watched.
Yeah, it's funny because there's like the slow version of like the opening theme that it uses for a bit, and then then you get like Daniel trying to be a helicopter. It's like, well, that's maybe not appropriate. Like this would have been a good just like black end credits episode with like a slow version of that song or something.
I've got to say, when it comes to Ultra Magnus's death, because I appreciate I've sort of talked about what happened, but we both haven't really given our thoughts on it properly. I thought the way it was done was, in the context of this story, I thought it was great. Obviously enjoyed it is the wrong word to use, but I thought the way it was done was really well added to the story. And in hindsight, like I kind of alluded to, I wish we kind of got more of Ultra Magnus in the series, because there was just a while where I forgot he was in the show. I remember saying that on the podcast, because we hadn't seen him in so long.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, it isn't. I'm always actually curious as to. My perception is always that, like, his toy flopped, which is why they're always just trying to off him or get rid of him at the earliest opportunity. Like, even in the movie, he, like, lasts, like, 2 minutes and they try to blow him up. And he's always, like, the sort of always the bridesmaid, never the bride, in a sense. Like, you know, he gets kind of passed over for leadership stuff, and he's sort of that, like, persists even in, like, kind of comic continuities now, where he's kind of seen as a bit of a kind of boring, stuck-up jerk to a lot of characters. And I've always, like, wondered, it's a bit chicken and egg of, like, what is the way he's been kind of portrayed in a lot of the media, like, mean that he was maybe not the most successful toy, or was it just, like... Because I feel like Galvatron always went down pretty well as a Megatron replacement with the kids at the time, but Ultra Magnus was always just like, there's no Optimus Prime. It's not that great, really. Like, he's a car carrier. It's just, I don't know, he's just not as cool. And I feel like it never quite worked out for Ultra Magnus. And so whenever he sort of gets, like, offed or sidelined, it always feels like a very direct allusion to that. But that aside, like, this was actually pretty powerful as a whole kind of, like, death scene goes. Like, I mean, it doesn't quite get to kind of go as ham on it as, like, you know, the death of Optimus Prime in the movie, but it's still actually genuinely quite affecting. Like, the whole bit with Metroplex is kind of a really touching, like, that's kind of what makes it, in a sense, of just, like, speaking to him as a person. And you could argue that they could have searched a bit harder for somewhere nice to bury him. They do just kind of fire him into the first lake they find. But, you know, it's
not wrong.
I feel like if they'd have had an extra 30 seconds just to go through a few locations, and then they're like, oh, this is a really nice place. But it feels like they go down the road and be like, yeah, this'll do. This is all right. You know, this bit of water is quite nice, really. It's what he would have wanted, right? But you know, the whole thing, yeah, like, it's really well played out. Like, it's really well done from an emotional point of view. I would also argue Fortress is very quick to proclaim him as dead. Like, he's just like, it's like basically like cradles him for 2 seconds. Like, so now he's dead, I guess we better get on with this. And it's like, well, at least get someone else to look at him. I mean, like, he's literally been blown to bits. I mean, again, movie continuity doesn't exist here, but he's literally been blown to bits and put back together again. Like, that was probably a far worse fate than this one. Like, he might be all right. Like, are you sure? Do you not want a second opinion here?
It's funny you mentioned that, because the one thing I've not mentioned yet is he doesn't turn grey.
He doesn't. No, we don't.
So we'll probably find out in the TF Wiki notes in a minute whether he is actually dead. But part of me at this moment in time does wonder: is he actually dead, or has he just got a really bad concussion?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm sure we'll get a sudden episode title that will just be like "The Return of Ultra Magnus." Or
Ultra Magnus lives.
Yeah, Ultra Magnus is not dead, actually. Oops. But because, yeah, I mean, especially now I'm assuming now they have literally dropped him to the bottom of a lake in a big heavy casket. You know, there's not really much coming back for him. But no, I mean, all joking aside, like, yeah, I was genuinely. I was here ready to kind of just goof on the whole thing, but I was actually like, oh, this is like, you know, I'm not gonna Daniel it. I'm not gonna be in floods of tears, but it's like, oh, this is actually quite emotional and touching, and like it actually really works.
And like you said, the Metroplex bit for me is what made it.
Yeah, it's a really nice, like, they could have. There was enough kind of emotional impact to it that they could have just left it at that, but that they took time out of the episode to kind of to clarify that, and even give Metroplex a little bit of kind of character, because he's always just been the big dude that's also the city, and to actually have a bit of like, no, like, him and Ultra Magnus was close, which again, like, actually, even from our point of view of like having had the movie continuity, like, that's kind of the vibe from the get-go, because, you know, Ultra Magnus is always like the city commander, like, as he's referred to here. Like, it is him overseeing kind of defenses on Earth and defense of Autobot City, and so of course like Metroplex would be the one who would perhaps have the closest relationship with him, and so yeah, it's a really nice kind of little bit of something extra that really kind of accentuates the whole thing. The only other thing that this did bring to mind is like, I really miss Skylinks. I just want Skylinks to have an episode. But
would Skylinks have been introduced? Yeah, because it was in season 3, which did
season
happen
3.
in Japan. So
yeah, we just don't get any Skylinks. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a strange thought that came to me watching this episode particularly. I'm not sure why this one specifically, but I did just find myself just writing down.
Probably because of Wingwolf, quite frankly.
Maybe. Yeah, there's a little bit of Skylinks about that. It's just like, no, I miss Skylinks. Bring back Skylinks. Skylinks wouldn't have let Ultra Magnus die. That's what I'm really saying.
So I guess from there, before we kind of give our thoughts overall on the episode, let's delve into the TF Wiki, because chances are there may be some interesting notes here to make mention of that might help clarify a few things.
Yeah, like in 3 episodes, Ultra Magnus will be back again.
So, continuity notes. Galvatron's unknown master plan was first hinted at on Fight to the Death on Planet Beehive, as we've mentioned. Precisely what, quote-unquote, incorporating the Earth into his system, end quote, involves is not covered in this episode, but will be revealed in a forthcoming episode.
Oh, cool. We'll finally get the other slides of his PowerPoint presentation then.
It is added here, but don't get your hopes up for anything sensible.
Well, no, I mean, it's Galvatron. It would be weirder if it was sensible.
The Headmaster's telepathic powers were first introduced fully in the episode Cybertron is in Grave Danger Part 2. That is when Cybertron was destroyed. The head formation, introduced properly in Find Scorponok's Weak Spot, takes another new twist in this episode. This time, the Headmasters do not disconnect from their transectors, before entering the formation. And once they're powered up, they do not release their grip on each other, spinning their energy-charged bodies in a destructive circle. This is probably the most important evolution of the Headmaster's powering up abilities, as it is specific to something else that will prove key later in the series. You're smiling because you know what it is and I don't.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Apparently, here's a little note. 6 Shots Wingwolf mode previously appeared in issue 4 of the Headmasters manga.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So it was actually acknowledged in comic form then, which is good.
Yeah.
Continuity errors. Oh, fun enough, we just mentioned this. When he dies, Ultra Magnus does not turn grey. This stands out particularly since the Headmasters was so attentive to the point in early episodes of the series when Blaster, Soundwave, and Optimus Prime all turned grey, as it were, and whatnot. Maybe his inner robot did.
I mean, this is true, because this is the key to the Ultra Magnus toy, is it was basically recolored Optimus Prime that just got bolted into a big body, which I think is partly why the toy was so disappointing, because it's like, well, you've made Optimus Prime again, and you just whacked him into a big plastic thing, and it's just not the same.
Trivia. Apparently, this episode marked the return of the Headmasters to Japanese television screens after a 4-week break.
God, imagine coming back to this. Like, you're like, oh, I wonder what Transformers is going to be like. I've forgotten what that show is like. And it's just like, yeah, by the way, we're just killing more characters. Welcome back.
But yeah, quick note as well, just to double check. This aired on January the 22nd, 1988. Additionally, this is the first Headmasters episode to feature an insert song.
Yeah.
The song in question is, and I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation, but Tate Ikari no Headmasters, which plays as Ultra Magnus and Six Shots battle, begins. The RTM1 dub removes it. I don't know what RTM is. We may find out in a few minutes. But let's get a bit more about this song. Oh, in fact, I can actually tell you what some of the lyrics are. Would you like to know?
Yes. Is it like, I'm a ninja consultant, I'm going to kill you, Ultra Magnus, something hell.
So, I'll just read what the translation is, as it were. So, we'll just go with that. So, the lyrics are, green earth shaking in the wind, children playing in the creek, the silence, this glow, who would ruin it? Who? You'll think I'll let you, Decepticons. I'll risk my life in this fight. You think I'll let you, Decepticons. As long as I have strength, I will fight. Transform, Headmasters. You are the ones who will bring peace. Wow, it's literally telegraphing here. Yes, I'm about to die. Please know
this is the most Japanese insert song possible. Of just like, I am literally going to sing what is happening.
Well, not now, but pigeons fly from a white church.
Well, mostly going to sing like that.
A bell celebrates the love between two people. This moment, this happiness. Who would ruin it? Who? You think I'll let you pass, Decepticons? Believe in your friends in this fight. You think I'll lose, Decepticons? As long as I have the strength, I will fight. Transform, Headmasters. You are the ones who bring courage. You think we'll let you, Decepticons? We'll risk our lives in this fight. You think we'll let you, Decepticons? As long as we have strength, we will fight. Transform, Headmasters. You are the ones who bring justice.
So they let Ultra Magnus die, so...
yeah, the end. But also performed by Hironobu Kageyama. So, obviously, we spoke about that very early on in this podcast run. Perhaps, arguably one of the most famous songs they're known for is Shala Head Shala from Dragon Ball Z. But also does the opening theme to Headmasters. So, very interesting stuff there. And yes, that was the song, Andy. In the context now of the episode, the lyrics mostly make a lot of sense.
yeah. We hadn't quite realised how hell-bent the Decepticons are on, like, breaking up loving couples. Like, we thought they were just after Energon, but apparently they're all about divorce as well.
Unless, this is me going far too deep here, is the metaphor meant to be they're breaking up Metroplex and Ultra Magnus?
I mean, maybe this is about Galvatron and Soundwave again. I mean, I don't know. That's the whole thing as well. So who can say?
So let's talk about Six Shots Wingwolf mode, because it is noted the following. This mode was created for the animated series, hence it's not mentioned in his toy's instructions, but you can still transform the toy into this form.
Oh, nice. Well, there you go.
Because it was created by simply fiddling with the figure to see what sort of other forms one could create out of it.
I mean, fair play to them for doing that and actually like making a selling point for the toy. See, that's one of those things where if this had been like in a modern era, there would have been like the official YouTube channel would have had somebody transforming it into this mode just to prove you could do it. That would have been a TikTok or something. But as it was a like I wonder how many kids had their like six-shot toy at home after that episode. It was like, I wonder if you can actually do this, and tried it. And then probably broke their six-shot and had to buy another one, which was maybe the real master plan all along.
And apparently as well, this is not the only time this happens in the Japanese, Transformers series.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, again, it's sort of a bit of a tradition of like Japanese animation as well, because like even the sort of the Valkyries in Macross, they have their like girl walk mode, which is basically like part jet, part robot transformation, which I suspect came from a similar kind of place of animators fiddling with the toys. It's like, what if you had this cool mode, but it's just a plane with legs, which I'm sure was not in the original intent of creating those toys.
So, final part of this section, foreign localization. Just to say it, basically all of the episode titles in languages, be it Mandarin, Italian, or English, sub or dub, it's all the Death of Ultra Magnus. That's all what it translates to. The only additional note here is relating to the Shout Factory subtitles. Apparently, Six Shot makes numerous references to the pit, despite the subs using a more straightforward hell previously.
Or they just deliberately, was this a kind of like, we don't want to upset the conservative Christians, we can't call it hell thing, I guess.
Exactly. They should have gone with the Dragon Ball Z. Well, it's not been invented yet at that point, but the Home for Infinite Losers, the HFIL. Also, Sparks is used this time in place of Hearts. I'm trying to think when they mentioned Hearts in the context of the episode now. But there you go. So that's the only other note relating to that, Andy. With that being said, I thought this episode was freaking great. It was really, really strong. The fact we've just found out it came back after a 4-week break. What a freaking episode to come back to after a 4-week break.
Yeah, I mean, probably better than that. Imagine if this was the last episode before a 4-week break. Like, imagine if this is what you went out on of just like, oh, this killed Ultra Magnus and dropped him in a river. Cool, I guess we'll be back in a month.
But overall, your thoughts? Obviously, I assumed you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great. Like, again, this is the sort of episode, the title is there to be a tentpole of like important stuff is going to happen here, and sometimes that can be risky because your expectations are set so high that it's like, oh well, it was a bit of a damn squib. But no, like it was really good. Like I say, handled the actual Death of Ultra Magnus really well. Just very cool, kind of the run up to that, kind of getting a little bit of Triptychon versus Metroplex and kind of all the other stuff going on around the periphery of that, and then obviously the big picture stuff that lives on in terms of what Galvatron and Zarak are up to. That's appetites have been whet sufficiently there to want to see what becomes of that, and that's clearly that's a massive focus at this point. And I just like also just bringing it back to Earth, like from all of our kind of gallivanting around, like we're back home for us as the viewer of just like, oh, Earth is now an important part of this. It's not just on the periphery, which it has been for quite a while in this series of like Earth is kind of secondary importance, and we have no idea why it's important again now, but it is, and it sort of brings it back home to like the whole reason Transformers takes place on Earth is that it gives you something relatable to be like, oh no, not Miami, or whatever. Which made me realize, by the way, like saying that this aired in 1988 was probably like everyone was talking about Miami Vice, so they were probably like, fair, that's a good place to put an episode of Transformers. But yeah, like it was a really good episode, and it's also a really good stepping stone for what's to come, like as it sort of feels like we're kind of getting into the final acts now in terms of sort of episodes, so that's pretty hype.
Yeah, I guess the final thing I will say is, also given that this was the first episode back after a 4-week break, we previously mentioned how sometimes episode titles would be shared ahead of time in like print publications to sort of help drum up interest for people tuning in. That this would have done that. Like you said, that using that gambit of let's just say it in the title, this would have been the way to get people to tune back in immediately.
Yeah. Like I wonder if that kind of, because as we say it, we don't have any like next episode previews or like next week. Yeah, the typical anime thing is like have next week episode title here. Like I wonder at what point that was like revealed to people, whether it was only in like the week running up to like, oh, Headmasters is back, like look it up in the TV listings, what's the next episode called, oh my god, or whether there was a kind of like at some point there was like a preview of just like next episode. I wonder how long people had to wait between knowing that this episode was called The Death of Ultra Magnus and actually watching it.
One would think there must have been like some TV commercials that were airing in, but like during other episodes of things.
Yeah, but even then, like I wonder whether they named that like by title, or whether they're just like, hey, Headmasters is back, and here's like 5 seconds of footage. Like it's one of those curiosities of just like in our online world these days, nothing is kind of sacred, because you always know straight away what the next episode's called, even if it's not explicitly named. It'll usually end up online pretty quickly, and I just wonder whether it was like a complete shock. Like did people for the most part tune into this episode and then suddenly it hits you with like, here's the episode title at the start, and you're just like, what? Or was it a bit more of a kind of did people know well in advance?
So we talked about next episodes. The next episodes we're going to be talking about is episodes 25 and 26 of Transformers Headmasters, which, Andy, I will now reveal the episode titles, which if the last time we did this is anything to go by, who the heck knows what's going to happen, because I don't know what the next episodes are called. First of all, episode 25, flippin' heck. The Emperor of Destruction vanishes on an iceberg.
That's very specific. I mean, it's I like they didn't just say Scorponok vanishes on an iceberg.
So that is episode 25. Episode 26. I risk my life for Earth. So we already know something significant happens in this episode based on the sort of the subtitle erroring that was mentioned in the last podcast. So it sounds like we've got 2 significant episodes coming up, mate. And for all we know, every single episode now is going to be significant in some way.
Yeah, well, yeah, those episode titles certainly suggest important things are afoot. Yeah, let's. I'm kind of gutted that like I'm not going to get to watch these for a couple of weeks. So I've got some busy time coming up because it's getting to that point of like I just want to watch more of these to see where we're going with this.
Yeah, a little peek behind the curtain. We've sort of managed to alter our recording schedule so we can keep to being fortnightly again for a bit. So by the time we next watch these, it probably would have been close to 3 or 4 weeks, Andy. So there'll be we've had time to digest the Ultra Magnus death.
Yeah, you see, if only we'd known that there was that big gap before the Ultra Magnus episode, we could have timed our own recordings to be the same. So we would have had a long gap and then come back to the Death of Ultra Magnus, but we didn't quite manage it.
Now, there we go. But folks listening and or watching, thank you very much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, why not tell a friend? Or better yet, if you want to tell us directly, you can find our Twitter and Instagram accounts under the name of Starscream's Pod. If you've been watching on YouTube and you enjoyed this video, why not hit the like button or leave a comment and let us know what you thought about these episodes if you have been watching along with us. When it comes to when the next podcast is going to be available, we're aiming to try and keep to our usual every 2 weeks or so from when the last episode was published. So by the time you're hearing this, it will be 2 weeks all going well from when it was published. Good sir, before we wrap up good and proper for today, any other final closing thoughts?
I have 2 final closing thoughts.
Oh, okay.
One of which is that there is a karaoke version of that insert song available, so I won't hold it against you if you want to go back and edit in your English rendition of that song, like in full tune to the karaoke version of that song, for the good of our listeners, who I'm sure are now clamoring for this. My other thought is, do you think Scorponok lets his friends call him Scorpy? Like, what do you think his shortened name is?
Scorp.
Or
no, just Knock.
Knock. I mean, yeah. Actually, Knock is kind of quite good as a nickname. Just like,
or maybe just call him Zarak.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I imagine he's the kind of guy that would insist everybody calls him Lord Zarak at all times. But I like the idea that his like short name would just be apostrophe Knock, and that's what his mates call him down the pub when he goes for a pint of Energon.
And he gets really annoyed when someone typos it to be like knock knock on the door.
Yeah, that's the downside. Everybody's always making the knock knock jokes, and it's like knock knock, who's there? Knock. Yeah, very funny. Go away.
Just clomp. Just clomps him out of the way.
Yeah, just with a big old claw.
Or a shield, take your pick.
Yeah,
depending on what mode he's in.
Exactly. Yeah, just mind the weak spot.
There you go, folks. Thank you very much for listening. Until our next podcast, from myself, Jeremy Graves, from him, Mr. Andy Hanley. Andy, there's a few words you've got to say before we close out good and proper. Do you remember what they are?
Bar weep, grana weep, ninny bong? I don't know.
I mean, not in this continuity. No, based on the last podcast, it was going to be head formation of friendship.
Oh, yeah, head formation of friendship.
Take care, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Not the spinny, angry head formation of friendship. The nice one.
Good point. Signing out, folks. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.